Good day everybody, and welcome to the first South African String Convention. This is my contribution to this year's program. My name is Carel Henn and I'm a cellist. I live in Johannesburg, and apart from my playing career I'm also a cello teacher. About half of my work is teaching the cello, and in my cello practice, in my teaching practice, it has somehow evolved over the years. I have ended up with a large number of adult students, whereas some of my colleagues prefer not to teach adults, some of them even not at all. They specialize more in younger students and children. I've gotten to have a great affinity for adult students, and I enjoy very much working with adult students. With adult students, a lot of my students are complete beginners. So that means that some of the adult students have never played a musical instrument before. Some of them even start, in other words, from scratch, never having any interaction with music at all. With me today I have one of my adult students. This is Leon Raad. Thank you very much, Leon, for joining us today. So what we will be discussing today is some of the challenges and difficulties with adult students. As you might well understand, a lot of the difficulties that we find with children and younger students, you will not have the same problems with adult students and vice versa. So we will talk a little bit about some of the difficulties and challenges we have as adult students. One of the first things that come to mind is the reading of notes. As musicians, we often think that it is second nature to be able to read notes, and even if we have prospective students or new students, adult students, we often think that they must have played as children or had some encounter in the past with reading notes. But this is often not the case. Often I have students starting completely from scratch, which means that they can't read any notes at all. So the reading of notes is like a complete different language to them. So we must be very sympathetic to these students that starting from scratch, that has no knowledge of reading notes. Leon, I know, fortunately can read notes. Leon actually has an interesting story. You played as a child.
Yes, the last time I played was at school exactly 50 years ago. It's actually now 51 years ago.
Yes.
I played cello, and now, since I've retired, I thought that is the best thing to do now.
Interestingly enough, we did the Swan a while ago, and Leon was very excited about this piece. He said, now finally after 50 years he can play this piece. So Leon has played cello before, so he didn't have a problem with reading the notes. But just for out of interest, did you have a problem reading notes after 50 years of not?
Carel, very, very definitely. I did not even know whether it's the A string or the D string or whatever, and even, you know, how you read notes, bass clef or treble clef. I had to start from scratch,
yeah.
But one picks it up again.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised one picks it up actually faster than what I expected.
Yes, because I suppose it's still in the back of your mind. You haven't, it might feel like you've completely forgotten it, but
yes.
not 100%,
Yes.
It's still in the back
yes.
of your mind. So that's one of the first problems that we encounter, is the reading of the notes. A second problem that comes to mind is a simple thing that one tends to overlook, and this is practice time. With children, quite often, even especially young children, we get them into a habit of practicing very soon at an early age. So we try and get the kids to practice for 10 or 15 minutes every day, and it becomes second nature, it becomes a habit. But I suppose if you're over 40 or 50 years, it's harder to establish habits. So it's difficult to establish a practicing routine. But apart from that, I think also what we encounter often is people are so committed to their careers and job life, and also to their families. You have to raise a family, kids, etc. So practice time becomes a problem. Now this, of course, two things that I think of with Leon. You've had a very busy career life. So I assume there wasn't time to really pursue your musical hobby during your career life.
Yes, very definitely so. Carl, it's early morning to work and then late afternoons back in the traffic, nearly an hour back in the traffic, and then when it's tired, there just isn't the time to practice really and really do justice to properly practice cello while you're working. But since I've retired, one's got more time, and this has been my biggest priority. And what's nice about it, it's a thing that I elected to do. So I love playing the cello, but what I learned from school days is that early morning, the earlier you practice in the morning, the better. There must be a discipline about it, because if there's not a discipline, one doesn't progress in that. Because to practice in the afternoons or early evenings, there's always something coming up, and then some other reason why one can't do it. So as a skill, as a child at school, the discipline was there every morning before school. Now in the morning, my wife's a school teacher. As soon as she leaves for school, I immediately start practicing.
But it's still that thing
Yes.
of routine and discipline.
Yes, discipline, routine, early in the morning.
Now, one of the main problems that I've encountered with adult students is a health issue. Now, obviously, when one gets older in life, say beyond 40 or 50, one's body deteriorates and one ages. That's a natural process. But as soon as somebody starts a new hobby, or I'm thinking of sports especially, the body does feel the strain. With music, I think immediately of joints that get stiff, muscles that becomes flabby or weaker. Quite often as cellists and double bass players, we have back problems. So there's a couple of physical problems that occur with older students. And what I've found is that often an adult student would be stuck with a problem, but they will often be shy or reluctant to discuss this problem because they think that it's something they have to hide or shy away. But one encouragement that I can give the adult students is that it's not a unique problem to one specific student. We all suffer from the same problems as we age. We have the same health, mostly the same health problems. If I think on the cello, for example, we need quite big stretches, and often when, especially with beginner students, beginner adult students, the hand is just physically not able to stretch enough. So we have to adapt to and introduce certain exercises just to be able to stretch, do stretch exercises, because with older hands, the hands are not as flexible anymore as with younger hands. And the same with muscle development. With the cello, again, we use a lot of the back muscles that becomes flabby, so we have to sometimes use specific or do specific muscle exercises to develop this as adults. But my point being, don't think as an adult student you are the only one suffering with these problems. Often these problems occur with many other students in similar situations. So be open and discuss it with your teacher and discuss it with fellow adult students. You will find out very often that people are stuck with the same kind of problems. Leon, I just want to ask you, are there any physical restrictions or limitations that you can feel?
Well, Carl, a good question, because it's normal as one gets older, you know, one has more natural pains, you know, and specifically the back. You know, sitting in an office environment, in a working career for 40 years, in a good ergonomic chair and there's back support, it's easier to sit in that environment. But playing cello, you've got to sit upright, not lean backwards. And I had a lot of pain initially. And luckily I had a discussion with a biokineticist, and he just told me the solution to that is very upright, tilt the pelvic bones a bit forward, and then sit forward and press your feet very hard on the ground. And that helped tremendously with that. And now as I play, I don't have these back pains anymore, but initially it was quite a serious problem, you know. Yeah. And then the other thing that I find getting older is playing from memory. You know, and interesting, I sometimes thought that, you know, why do they really retire people at 60, 65, you know, companies and that? It's because your memory is not as good as what it is when younger. You can still do the work or whatever. So, you know, that is for me a challenge, getting older, only being a half a senior citizen now, is that when one's younger, you know, you can memorize the music, and then you actually can look at your fingering position with your hands, and your bowing, is it nice and that. Now you've got to pay more attention to reading the music, so you've got to feel your finger positioning much more accurate. That I think is the top of mind two challenges.
But interestingly enough, often I hear from adult students how they relate to the mental capabilities, or the keeping the brain busy. It's quite an intellectual thing as well, apart from a physical thing. They have to concentrate, and it actually, with an aging brain as well, it keeps your brain motivated and working, thinking about playing a musical instrument. And I suppose it's one of the big advantages of playing a musical instrument, just keeping the brain alive and busy.
Yes, Carel, very definitely. I once read an article, playing music is the best thing you can do as one gets older for the brain. It keeps the brain active. It's really, and reading music, you've got to concentrate. You know, I was just telling some friends of mine, you can't let your mind go for 2 seconds. You've got to concentrate on the music. So it's very good playing music if one's older. Very good.
Yeah. So I just want to use this also as an encouragement to older adult students. It's never too late to start learning an instrument. And like Leon, even if you have played and you want to take it up again, there's always encouragement, and please don't hesitate. Even as a beginner, complete beginner, I've had many people often telling me they've postponed this in life. They get to 40 or 50 years old, they've had such busy lives, and they've never got actually to the point of sitting down and making the decision of playing. So please feel encouraged. There are many students that is in the same boat. Don't shy away, don't be scared, jump in and do it. We've got a little surprise for you. We want to play a short piece for you. This is a Sarband by George Friedrich Handel, arranged for 2 cellos. So I hope you've enjoyed that little performance, and thank you very much, Leon, for joining me. I hope you have something to take away from this as adult students, and please stay encouraged and keep on practicing. Thank you.
Carel, as a closing remark from my side, thank you very much. Something that I can suggest is that, you know, there's a lot of self-help books that you can do, and I thought myself, let me first try myself. But it doesn't help. You've got to work with a cello teacher, because with a cello teacher it's a catalyst to really pick it up with a speed. So that's a really, don't try to do it yourself.
Yes.
And I'm honored that you're my cello teacher. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.